this computer, and I think everything is going to work, but we'll see. I'll have to watch the replay and check and see if all of the different elements are present. When I do the share screen, I would sure like that to be visible. Lisa said that it's just me talking, that you can still see me, but you can't see the shared screen. And what's the point of doing that then? All right, so today is Monday, and on Monday, we're going to talk about setting up the daily practice. So Monday, if we can remember this, will be setting up the daily practice day. I think that is a good thing to do on Monday. We consider that sometimes the beginning of the work week, the beginning of the week. I know sometimes Sunday is the beginning of the week. I don't know. I don't know who decides what's the beginning and what's the middle. But otherwise, Monday is the beginning of the week. So I think that is a really good, the beginning to set up your practice, to look at what is going to be my complete practice for the week. So this isn't a real question. I don't really want to put people on the spot, but the question would be, so everybody here is obviously awake, like we woke up this morning and here we are. Have you checked into your practice already? So that's kind of the thing that I wanted to emphasize today. So as we go along, and we've already done this to where I explained the daily practice and we have all these different practice points. Depending on what you're practicing in terms of hydrostasy, T, the complete practice, the mind space, mindfulness method, depending on what space you're in, is what elements I'm going to add to that entire daily practice. So for example, hydrostasy is exactly what I do and what I've done with vivid detail. So if you're going to do the hydrostasy practice, then there are going to be little elements to the daily practice that are just a little bit different than T, the complete practice, which is super general. Does that make sense? Otherwise, today and every Monday until, we don't, we can begin setting up our week with setting up our daily practice. So do you guys already know what I mean by daily practice? Do you think, is that something that I need to kind of talk about and go into a little bit? Or does the idea of a daily practice, that makes total fucking sense, right? Or not?
You should go into it.
What's that?
I think you should go into it for the recording process.
Hey, that's a good idea. Well, a daily practice is just that. It's something that we do every day. Now, let's say I was going to have a daily yoga practice. Mike, what does a daily yoga practice mean? I'm sorry, you might not be able to answer. I'm just going to sit here all day waiting. But a daily yoga practice would, yes, Mike. Sorry.
Practicing.
Yeah, every day, right? So you would make a commitment to practice. I don't know what the specific commitment would be. Maybe you just commit to 5 minutes. Maybe you just commit to a full hour every single day. That would be a daily practice. Now there's a second word that I'm going to add to this. So we'll have 3 words total. Daily blank, wait, 4 words. Wait, no, 3. Daily blank practice. Ida for 5,000 points, or Michael, I'm sorry. I think he wanted to answer this one. For 5,000 points, what is that middle word?
One is deliberate.
No, I like that answer. Daily deliberate practice. I love it. But that's not the word I was looking for.
That's what I was going to say too.
It was? Okay. Well, so I'll give you a hint. The example that I gave with yoga was 15 minutes or an hour. What is the difference between 15 minutes or an hour to what we do with tea or mind space mindfulness method or hydrostasy? What is different?
Lauren said it in chat, I think.
Formal? Yeah, it's actually maybe the opposite word.
Embodiment.
Ah, there we go.
Embodied. Yeah.
Yes. We make the formal practice informal by taking it with us all throughout the day. So now we have two things. We have a daily practice, and it is a daily embodiment practice. Don't you think that makes a difference? So we're not necessarily looking at the formal practices in the beginning with this. If you already have formal practices like Ida goes out and she does the swimming, and that was already kind of there to begin with, and it's just kind of something that she wants to do. But T really focuses on informal embodiment in the beginning. Definitely, as we go along, and especially with hydrostasy, I do offer formal practices, such as standing meditations, moving meditations that you would do during what I call time blocks, just periods throughout the day that you have committed to just doing something Tai Chi related or something homework related or something work related, for example. I really like time blocking. Does that make sense? So any questions so far about a daily practice is done every day? What we're doing is a practice that we informally take with us all throughout the day. When we leave the house, when we're driving in the car, when we get to work, when we leave from work, when we get home, when we're watching TV, when we're using the bathroom, when we're taking a shower, when we're walking our dog, when we're painting, when we're on vacation, when we're enjoying time with our family, we are pointing the light of our attention into the now moment on purpose so that the mindfulness pillar is maintained. Otherwise, if we're a leaf at the mercy of the wind, we're very likely going to lose the mindfulness pillar. And then before you know it, we have lost the presence pillar. And then before you know it, we are basically feeding what I call the four destroyers and the atrophy of awareness, which is the nemesis. I got a fancy name for everything. At least it's consistent though. So the question for somebody who is practicing a embodiment daily practice would be, have you started? So one of the things that I would recommend, and it's one of the things that I myself do, and it's something that I've done for a decade plus. I mean, I don't know how long I've been doing this, and I can tell you where it came from. I just noticed that I would wake up and my mind would immediately go into all of the dramas for the day, like immediately. And I swear sometimes it felt like I was thinking before I was even fully awake. Like I could feel like I was waking up midstream. I know that probably has to do with memory coming from the dream state to the waking state. But for me, in my experience, with the anxiety and the depression and the frustration and the anger and the irritation and all of the things that I was creating, it seemed to just jump right at the beginning of the day. Has anybody else experienced that? Where the moment you wake up, it just pops off and you're immediately thrust into the spinning monkey mind? Ida says yes. Shayna says yes. Lauren says yep. All right, so at least we can relate to what that feels like. And so that's why I decided to start my practice the moment I woke up, because I didn't see any other way for my mind to be relaxed as soon as I wake up other than to do my practice as soon as I wake up. At this point, I had given up on magic pills. I had given up on the idea that a 30-minute practice every day for the next 30 years is going to finally achieve the result that I wanted. I don't have the money to keep going to all of these retreats, so that's not an option. Okay, Carly's driving, but she says yes, definitely. She would wake up and immediately launch into the thinking. And the thinking, is what is creating, how we feel, especially when we're unconscious, because the mind is following the thought is leading the body and the mind, and it just becomes this closed feedback loop where they're all just feeding each other. So I had no other solution. The only thing that I could think of, the only thing that made sense to me in principle wasn't hypnotism right before bed. It wasn't, some meditation that was supposed to last for 18 hours. Maybe that stuff exists. Heck, I don't know, but I wasn't exposed to it. It didn't exist in my experience. So in principle, the only thing that I could come up with is that if I want it to work, I have to do it, and that it only works when I do it. Has anybody else noticed that about the T practice? It only works when you do it, and you have to do it for it to work. Hey, that's kind of saying the same thing, but it's still kind of catchy, isn't it? That's one of the, it's not really a catch, it's actually the empowerment element, but it only works when you do it, and you have to do it in order for it to work. The good news is the doing it is your attention. It is much closer to the essence of who we are than our thinking mind is. Thinking can stop. We can exist without thought. You cannot have an experience without your attention. The two are intrinsically combined. Every experience you have ever had in your entire life has been a result of your attention. Now, whether that attention was placed deliberately or not, no, that's a different question. So where I'm going with this is, there was a time in my life, I was still working at the movie theater, and I realized that I have to do this practice for it to work. When I came back from Starved Rock that day, I realized that my practice wasn't working because I wasn't doing it. It just seemed so obvious that it was painful. Have you ever felt that, Mike? Where something is so obvious that it's just like, damn, like it this practice only works when you do it. You have to do it. It's an embodiment practice, so you have to do it all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I recently noticed that I was like standing in it and not like moving as much as I should. And yeah, it's very deceptive, right? We can be very deceptive with it. That we know what to do, but then we don't do that. Same thing as like meditation for me. There are times when I'm deeply in it as far as my practice of it, and then there's other times when I'm disconnected of it from it, and it would seem counterintuitive, but it is.
It is. Trying to meditate is almost impossible. And that's why the T practice, eventually the meditative posture, I believe, becomes desirable. How you take that posture is up to you, whether it's sitting on a bench, maybe doing some gardening, Ida, or full lotus, straight up meditation, Mike. With this practice, when it gains accumulation, if those things are desirable to you still, it will be much easier. And I think that is a plus of this practice, is we don't give up necessarily on formal meditations and some of those things that we had maybe learned in the past, or we've seen somebody benefit from in some way. So the idea with T, though, is that when we embody mindfulness, which is meditative technique, then we're embodying meditation. And at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, when you're ready to sit down in your meditative practice, the formal aspect of that practice, it will be much easier. You will take the meditative posture, as opposed to, this is what Mike is talking about, trying to take the meditative posture, trying to get into the meditative posture makes almost no sense. However, if we're embodying the meditative state throughout the day, we're putting ourselves into the position to enjoy the meditative practice, as opposed to starting with that and basically trying to force ourselves in to enjoying the meditative posture. Most people with a monkey mind, and I'm not saying Mike's is, I'm sure Mike's is a very relaxed um, primate mind.
Like a gorilla.
Nah, nah, I don't know. That's not true. But so when we embody the practice and we start to feel the meditative state throughout the day, when it's time to approach our sitting meditation or our standing meditation for Tai Chi, whatever we're doing, oh gosh, it's so much easier. It's just so much easier to take that posture because we're already kind of chill. So it's not like we're sitting down trying to chill. What some people do is they're in like one of a wild emotional state, and they're like, well, I'm just going to sit down and meditate. Or they're not feeling like meditation, but they think that they should, so they force themselves into that posture, and that's just another attempt to control. This practice, you don't have to do that. If sitting meditation is something that is desirable to you, then in this practice you will be able to enjoy that. You'll be able to do that. Does that make sense? Mike, does that make sense that embodying the practice eventually will make any of those formal practices that you enjoy more enjoyable, and you'll be more likely to begin them in the meditative state as opposed to attempting to achieve the meditative state within the formal practice?
Yes.
Why didn't anybody think of this, Mike? When I took a meditation class, on day one, they wanted me to start a book that was keeping track of how long, there we go again, how long I'm meditating every day, and to commit to at least 30 minutes of sitting meditation, no matter how shitty it feels. Does that sound like force in trying to control to you?
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a Western spin on it. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'll tell you, they have thought of it. It's called yoga. That's what you're supposed to do before meditation so that you can be kind of stretched out and in a united state so that you could sit.
When you do your yoga, Mike, do you immediately clear your mind and enter the meditative state doing your yoga though? So what a lot of people do though when they do yoga is they're just thinking the whole time they do yoga. So you wouldn't be preparing yourself necessarily for a meditative state. But I do understand what you're saying. If we can clear the mind by the physical yoga, then Shavasana, we can go into the meditative state and hold that.
Yeah. Or
That does make sense.
any type of moving through, could be swimming, but then if you sit on the beach with your like head in the sun, if you will, you'll have I have a better meditative experience than if I'm in like a monkey mind. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So with yoga though, haven't you, so if you're on the beach in the morning and you have the sunshine and you're already relaxed, isn't the quality of your yoga practice, your physical yoga practice, not the meditative, although yoga is meditation, but you know what I mean, the physical, taking the shapes with your body, isn't the quality of that considerably different than if you were trying to do it in the city? Like one feels like relief, one feels like expansion into the infinite.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It comes much more natural like that.
Yeah.
More like fluid.
Hmm. And so now what I would mention is that by embodying the meditative state with the T practice, every time you approach your formal yoga practice, you'll immediately enter the flow state, or quickly, more quickly, because you are maintaining the deliberate mind ahead of time. So it's the same thing. If you maintain the deliberate mind before you do your physical yoga, then you're going to have one hell of a shavasana. Like you're going to really, and then at that point, words like deep and deeper, all that shit's just going to dissolve to you. Like none of that stuff matters. That's usually how I can tell who's meditating on a daily basis, because eventually this entire idea of deep and levels and, that shit just all falls away. the Western spin as, oh, I'm going to write that down. I like that, Mike. Western spin. Although it's not really just in the West, though. It's all over the world.
As if Eastern people don't have monkey mind. But I
Yeah,
think
that's why. That's
no,
why I just crossed out Western, Mike, to create modern spin. It is the modern spin. No, it's not modern. It's been happening for thousands of years. Shit. Maybe we just call it the spin.
yeah,
Okay.
it's just human, I think, to seek more and to figure it out so that we're constantly advancing.
I can see, so if you don't mind, Mike, I'm going to go into a quick spiel. So what you just said sounds like you're nailing down a principle because you said it's just human. So it's just human sounds like you just described an innate quality of the human species to try to figure it out. I'm not so sure that that is a reflection. So curiosity, do you see curiosity in nature? Mike, do you see curiosity in animals?
Yes.
But are they necessarily sitting there in thought trying to figure it out? Or is that different? Is it the human?
That seems to be different.
That's different. So exploration, creation, expansion, the divine trait that we have, Mike, is the creation. That's our divine characteristic, is we're creators. And that creation comes because we want to expand. We want to expand and create on how we feel as human beings. And I see that in nature, though. I see squirrels that want to expand their nests. Now you can get to creatures such as dolphins and whales, and you can see, what they do. I'm not an expert, so that's not my lane. I'm not going to pretend to be a whaleologist or anything. But the idea is that in relation to what Mike was just talking about, principle will have some sort of reflection in nature that we can look at as well. So a principle, Mike, is if no human beings were to exist, would that element still be there? Curiosity would still exist, creation would still exist, expansion into the infinite would still exist. So I would look at those as innate human characteristics, but I wasn't born in thought trying to figure it out. Do you see the difference, Mike? So I am very careful when I say something related to innate, because innate or absolute, now we're starting to get close to principle and law, and there can't be opinion in there. Now I know devil's advocate would say, well, your thoughts on a principle could be viewed as an opinion, but not to me. So that's at the point where I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. So I personally see curiosity in nature. If you don't, then I guess that's my opinion, but I don't really view that as an opinion. I see curiosity in nature. I feel my own curiosity, and it doesn't have to have thought. It's not necessarily a cognitive trap. So I would view curiosity much like I would view our imagination. It is an example of the evolution of human consciousness. Our consciousness has evolved to the point where we can imagine things that may not necessarily be there. I would view that as an indication of the evolution of our consciousness. Humor is an example of the evolution of our consciousness, because I don't see other animals all that much. Maybe hyenas, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not making each other laugh necessarily. They're not engaging in humor. So some of these unique qualities, or qualities that seem to be different than the world around me, I view those as examples of the evolution of consciousness. Our minds have evolved over time, and now we're able to imagine things that aren't there. And we're able to do some of these things, Mike. So does that make sense? Principle will not contain opinion. Transience, for example, that's not my opinion. You can look, you can see. The more that we have scientific experimentation on this, We can see there's no such thing as empty space. We can see that there's no such thing as an absolute vacuum. There's no such thing as anything not moving. Our brain has made that up because of what our eyes observe. We don't see air, so we would say there's nothing moving right here. But our science says otherwise. And the feeling of the wind on your face, even though you can't see it, says otherwise. Does that make sense, Mike? That was just a quick spiel on principle, and then I'm going to hop back to the point.
Yes.
All right, so what I'm talking about now is we have 3 words that we're working with. We're working with a daily embodiment practice. So I'm going to do this every day. That's the word daily. Embodiment means that I'm going to do it as often as I can remember, all day long, in every activity that I do. And then not only that, it's a practice. So it's an action. It's a verb. Where is my mind and did I put it there? That's why I talk about this as an act of allowing. Now, if we really want to get into it, it's not an action at all because it's awareness itself. But in our experience, it does feel like we're doing something. So we can call it that. It's fine. So if I am doing an embodiment practice, I wake up and I do that embodiment practice. And the reason that I started to do that at the movie theater was because I noticed that I would wake up with anxious thought. I would wake up and I would immediately start to try to figure it out. I would wake up and I would immediately compare and contrast and complain and blame other people and come up with all of these imaginary scenarios that were just essentially not necessarily a reflection, it was a projection of my own ego, of identification to an earnest. Because in my visions, I was always coming out on top. I'm number one. I'm the winner. All of that is just an attachment to the construct of self. I want the whole human race to win. I don't want to be a winner unless we're playing chess, but I want us to both have fun. So if you don't have fun, neither of us won. I don't care if I win the game and you didn't have fun, because the goal of the game is fun, not to win necessarily. Does that make sense? So daily practice, I do it every day. Daily embodiment practice, I do it all day, every day. And because I do my all day, every day embodiment practice, meditation becomes easier and desirable. I don't have to try to force myself into a meditative state where basically all I'm doing is trying to sit down and shut off my mind. I'm trying to counter thoughts. I'm trying to suppress thoughts. I'm trying to repress thoughts. And that type of meditative posture, it might get you to a relaxed meditative posture. I don't know. Then again, it might not. I do know that if it does get you there, it took a lot of energy because it was force. So when I had my mind moving at 500 miles an hour, I could not sit down and just feel meditative state. I had to fight to even get close. And it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, this can't be the way. I feel like I'm looking at a master mountain climber and saying, I want to start there. But what I did notice, the more that I did my practice when I was getting in, especially when I started teaching. When I started teaching after I left the barbecue restaurant, I just noticed that I wanted to sit quietly. I wanted to do my Tai Chi. I wanted to do my yoga all of a sudden. I wanted to go out and do my star charts because I had a book, and the book was called 365 Stars. And I really like the stars. So I'm constantly looking at them. And I don't mind them having names and stories. I think that's all interesting. So I had this little book that it was called 365. I think it's still in the garage. But bottom line, you look at a different star every day. And I just remember loving that and looking forward to that and really enjoying that. So all of my formal practices just became easy peasy punkin easy. Yeah, I did it today. Like, why wouldn't I? And yes, I immediately entered the meditative state because just like I was explaining to Mike, if I'm embodying the meditative state before my yoga class, then my yoga class is just so much more flow. You know, there's just We could use the word deeper. The reason we want to use that word is because it feels more profound to us. And by profound, it's populating our experience. When peace populates your experience in everything that you look, we would say that it is more profound in our experience. Does that ring true, Mike? Or am I just making that up?
Yeah, that rings true.
So if we're doing our tea practice before our yoga, the formal yoga, our formal yoga has a chance to be an expansive practice, not just trying to relax. Do you see what I mean? And then the shavasana, and then we go into the formal meditation afterwards. That's not going to be trying to quiet your mind, because you've been quieting your mind all day long. So no matter what formal meditation you prefer, maybe you're doing a divination type of meditation, maybe you're doing a kundalini meditation, maybe you're doing some qigong meditation where you're moving qi in your body, maybe you're doing like I would do, and I would not be attempting to manipulate and control anything at all. I'm paying attention to the flow of natural. That's just my boat. That's what I like. I like non-resistance, not trying to control, not relying on anything else other than the direction of my attention, which nobody can tell me. That's my job. That's my authenticity. Where I place my attention is my responsibility. It's also my source of empowerment. It's also my source of individuality. It's who I am, in a manner of speaking. Notice I have to say in a manner of speaking because I'm not identifying with any of that. I'm just saying. So once upon a time at the movie theater, I started to look at my practice as an all-day thing, and I started to set it up. And so I just want to focus on these first two aspects. In the very beginning of my day, as soon as I would wake up in the morning, I would check into the present moment. Here I am. I am fucking alive, and I think that's a great thing. Thank you. So now here's the thing. If you want to thank a deity, I don't see anything wrong with that if that's your belief. If you want to thank the moon, I don't see anything wrong with that if that's your belief. I probably wouldn't, but I'm earnest. I do what I do with my mind because I want to. That's why it's conscious creation and individuality. That's why it's the unique aspect of who we are, is where we choose to put our attention. It's free will. It's authenticity. When I'm placing my attention where I want it to be, I am my authentic self, folks. We always talk about authenticity. Sometimes people say, well, I just have to step into my authentic power. You know, I just have to, basically what people are saying sometimes is I'm just going to be rude as fuck. And I'm just going to tell people my opinion and they're going to like it or not. But I guess, I don't know. But I view authenticity as, where is my mind and did I put it there? Because if I put it there, then it's not social conditioning. It's not biological conditioning because I'm not used to doing it. It's not a habit I've created already because I'm not used to doing it. And it's making me feel more empowered because at the very least it's intention and will. I chose to put my mind there and I'm doing it. That's the equation for personal power. So no matter what, as long as my attention is on purpose, I am gaining personal power. So that's a strong minimum. And then speaking of creating the strong minimum, or, well, it's the strong beginning, I guess, as opposed to minimum. I wake up in the morning and I personally, so this would be the difference between tea and hydrostasy. With tea, I would recommend something. I don't know what it is. What do you want to do in the morning? Does anybody have an idea? Ida, what do you do in the morning as soon as you wake up for your tea practice, to embody it and to kick everything off in a deliberate nature? What do you do personally, if I can ask, if you don't mind?
I don't mind. I get back into bed after using the bathroom and do my breathing.
Okay, breathing. True.
Breathing, yeah, lying down. Well, I do what I call that Wim Hof, 3 rounds of that.
Wim Hof, okay.
I do 3 rounds of breathing in for 30 and breathing out, and then do a breath retention. And I don't even, I used to time it, but I don't even do that now. I just lie down with headphones on and I can feel into my body, do the breath retention, let it go. And that's when, after 3 rounds of that, I can really feel that, what's the word you use? Begin with P. You know, the
Proprioception.
Yes, I can
feeling.
really feel that. That's whenever I meditate. Then that's whenever I sort of look up my nose and go
Oh,
into
good.
that space
Hmm.
in the middle of my head, if you know what I mean. Well, I
I
don't
do.
look at my nose, but I have my eyes closed, but that's where I go. And
Hmm.
if I can get a couple of minutes of thoughts coming and going and just, well, that's what I do in the morning. And sometimes I can be in that for a good long time and be surprised when I look at the clock and it's long, or other days it's shorter. And then
Hmm.
I just get up and get on with my day after that.
Hmm.
Go
Perfect.
swimming, usually go swimming in the morning. So I do that before I go swimming. But before any of that, just putting my feet on the ground and walking out, that's the bit that I need to do my mantra and to get my day off to a good start, to keep my mind from going where you talked about earlier, where you're straight into uh, thoughts taking over your head.
Hmm.
The mantra helps me there before I do my breathing. So mantra, breathing, and then activities after that.
Hmm. Why is this a great example, Ida, of tea and not hydrostasy?
Probably because it's my way of doing it and
Hmm.
not yours.
Exactly.
Not, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So if you were practicing hydrostasy, then you would just be taking from my practice whatever works for you, right, Ida? I would never say that if you do hydrostasy, you have to do it exactly as I do it. I will never tell you what to do. I will make strong recommendations in hydrostasy. I'll tell you what I do, and then you can if you wanna, type of deal. But so I really like that answer. And so Ida is waking up, she's immediately going into her practice. And if tea, when, I don't know exactly how, but when tea becomes this thing that is far more recognized, it's far more common. Ida, I really look forward if you choose to teaching tea formally because you're doing it. So there's no reason that if you don't want to down the road that you could teach tea however you want to. Tea formally as swimming, as just enjoying your life, there's all kinds of ways to share it or not. I get it. So I'm just saying, if you did, you would be lovely at it. You give wonderful examples. Those are perfect examples. And then Lauren's is very similar and also it's perfect. So waking up, going straight into the breath and a mantra of what you're grateful for. So that sounds a lot like Abraham Hicks, and I think that's absolutely perfect. It's deliberate, it's on purpose, it's not what I do, but it's what you do. And it's principle based. You have chosen to put your attention on your breath. It's not a habit. You've chosen the mantra because it's what makes you feel good about what you're grateful for. So that's all principle based as far as I'm concerned. Does that make sense? What I do is I go into the deepest love, longest reach, highest vision, and I do my 4 modes practice, which is the belly breathing. So maybe Ida did take a little bit of hydrostasy with the belly breathing. I don't know. But that's kind of the difference between how I deliver those 2 practices. T, the complete practice, and hydrostasy. But the bottom line is that if we are truly going to create a daily embodiment practice with all 3 of those words, it has to begin the soon the moment we wake up. The moment that the eyeballs open, then deliberate nature can be engaged. And the reason that I started to do that again at the movie theater is because I couldn't help but notice that it seemed like my anxiety that I was creating, the thought that I was creating, the conditions that I was creating in my own body, it seemed to start almost before I woke up. Like I could swear that I was waking up 25 minutes into monkey mind. It didn't feel like I was waking up into a fresh new day. And I just, there came a time where I was just like, well, I don't see any way that this is going to get better without me doing my practice. So that's where I started to really see that my practice works when I do it, and I have to do it in order for it to work. So there is something that I do, and so we talk about the word resistance. I don't have the way that I use the word resistance, it does not take me away from the present moment, so I never resist the present moment. Does that make sense? That's how I use the word resistance. I don't mean Shayna is trying to give me broccoli and I'm resisting it. Do you see what I mean? I mean, that is a way you could use the word, and I'm good with that. Like, I would never correct Shayna and say, well, Shayna, it's not how I use the word. No, I mean, but we are talking about tea and this practice, and that's not the way that that word is used. So, but I do have a preference, which means that I have a non-preference, right? Doesn't preference imply non-preference? If I have the preference of a blue sky, then that must mean that other things aren't my preference. It doesn't mean I don't like them. Do you see what I mean? So maybe the sunshine is my preference, but that doesn't mean I don't like rain and I don't like snow and I don't like this and that. I can have preferences, folks. Maybe you don't, I don't know, but I do. I have some preferences. I prefer chocolate ice cream over mint. Not a big mint fan. I'm sorry. My mouth says no. It says that this is toothpaste, not sweet stuff. I don't know. It's just my brain. It's the carved block.
It's just kind of weird, the mint, right? Like, it's sensational,
Isn't it?
it's
Yeah,
weird.
it is weird. That's why I never eat those Andy mints at Olive Garden, because it's just weird to mix chocolate with mint. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't get it.
Wait, respecting the combination, though. It's a great combination. It's just like, if that's all you have, I'll take the mint. So I agree with you, but not to hate on the mint lovers out there, because it is
It's
sensational.
preference. Well, but I'm highlighting that preference is okay. So I prefer practices that and things that I can do. So I don't really prefer the idea of hypnotism. Could hypnotism work, Mike? I guess so. I don't know much about it. That's not my lane. So we could take things like retreats. I have a preference, and I would prefer not to spend my money on retreats. Retreats get expensive as fuck. Or they don't. Maybe you have an inn and you can get to these retreats. I don't. I don't right now. To go to a retreat costs money. And I couldn't help but notice the last retreat that I went to, it created an effect that I expected to last and it didn't. And then I also noticed that the teacher that was holding the retreat was essentially just teaching me their opinion as if it were principle. And I don't see some of the things that they were saying in nature or consistent even in the human experience. It just sounded like some shit they were making up. Maybe it was true as the sky is blue, but it just sounded like they were making some shit up. So I'm like, cool, I can respect your opinions, but they're not mine. It's all good, but they're just not mine. That's not my preference. So I like empowerment. Empowerment means that I'm doing it, not anybody else. This is me. This is my mind. This is my body. This is my life. The reason that I don't really prefer hypnotism is because I feel like I'm giving my power over to another person. Could it work? Yeah. I don't see any reason why other things other than, that's why I call this an approach. I even, I wove this into the fabric of the practice, is that it's just an approach. It's not the way. So there was this time where martial arts and philosophy, they wanted to call their way the way. Just like psychologists, their theory was the theory, rather than, oh my goodness, everybody is a little bit right and a little bit maybe not so correct. So I don't have to declare war on other practices necessarily, but there are preferences. I do have preferences. I want something I can do because that's something I can do. You see what I mean? It was the same way with Tai Chi. There was nothing that irritated me more than Mike as a Tai Chi teacher teaching me about the philosophy of relaxation. So I'll give you two different teachers. One will be Ida and one will be Michael. This is totally fake. Michael is teaching me about the ancient traditions of relaxation. I'm like, okay, cool. And then Mike teaches me about the ancient ascended masters of meditation and Tai Chi. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And then Mike tells me about all the secrets of the ancient meridians of traditional Chinese medicine and how Qi can start fires. But he doesn't demonstrate that, but he tells me all about it. And I mean, that's fine, right, Mike? That's okay if that's the kind of Tai Chi you're into. And and all of this is about relaxation, by the way. So all that philosophy, all of those words, all of that knowledge and information, it could all be absolutely beautiful, right? But it didn't necessarily help me relax. No, not necessarily. But Ida is telling me to tuck my elbows behind me. She's telling me to imagine the breath going into my crown, even though we don't have lungs in the back of our head. But while doing that, use your attention to listen behind you. Feel your feet and say a mantra anytime words come to your mind. If you're doing your Tai Chi and you start to compare to the great masters of antiquity, redirect. That thought is not appropriate for the setting. Do you see the difference in the two styles of teaching? I have a preference. I'm not saying that Michael's teaching won't lead to good Tai Chi or relaxation. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't fucking know because I'm not interested. It's not my preference. But I'm not necessarily going to think a negative thought stream about Michael's approach. It's just not my approach. And then that's kind of the difference also with tea and hydrostasy. So how you wake up, that's up to you in terms of the practice, the tea practice. You can do whatever you want, but there will be principles. Did you choose it? One of the best ways to make sure it's chosen is to write it down beforehand. Right, Mike? You can't hustle yourself if you say that orange is the color that I'm focusing on today. And then later in the day, you realize you haven't once looked for the color orange. You can't hustle yourself. You didn't do your practice. Do you see what I mean? Maybe you feel all right. Maybe you're a little bit mindful, but you didn't necessarily have the third pillar active.
Right. And then it's
But
an oscillation from 1 and 2, and it's yeah, for me it's constant. What do you call it?
I don't know.
Countermeasures.
Counterbalance. Yep. The constant state of counterbalance. Yep.
Counterbalancing. Yeah, I catch the flow sometimes, but without a pillar, the third pillar, then yeah, it gets.
You can't keep it.
Can't keep it, and you think yes, but I don't think you want to keep it. You think you want to, so.
Why wouldn't you want to keep flow?
Even if it's a careful balance, though, and it doesn't have to be a full counterbalancing. It can be more in the moment.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, there's always going to be something, right, Mike? Whether it's space junk falling from the sky or it's negative 13 degrees with the wind chill factor, there's something to adapt to, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not resisting the present moment because of it. Do you see what I mean? There's no resistance. We're engaging the present moment when it's negative 13 just as much as when it's 72 degrees and a perfect, lovely breeze.
Yeah, but I'm hearing, and I don't want to butt it, but I will butt it. It depends on how balanced we are.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That example, or like how fast the train is going in the other example. It's a careful one because as people, I think we get caught up in different overtures, or not just like the train's running, but like several different ones at different speeds, because we are emotional. We have different, reaction. We have different responses. So that's why it's even more careful to be careful with your attention, I guess,
yes.
and careful with our balance, so that we are ready to adapt.
Yes, and so that you're ready to see your own cognition and your own output as it's happening, so then you have the opportunity to direct it how you see fit. And there were even times, and this is something that we'll talk about much further down the road, in terms of the discussion of the evolution of consciousness, but there's times when cherry picking occurs. Some of the stickiest parts of our spider's web, whatever sticky for you, maybe I don't want to get into specific examples, but we all have our sticky parts of the web. I have mine, Mike, you have yours. Those are going to be the times where we're most likely to go unconscious, because it's unconsciousness that fed those habits in the first place. And so it's going to be those moments that's why I call them battlegrounds. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to have things that I need to adapt to all day long. And then I'm going to be met with battlegrounds. And if I'm completely unaware, I am a leaf at the mercy of the wind. And by the wind, I mean my own biology, social conditioning, the conditioning I have done already, and entertainment factors, because I have a mind that is at odds with the moment and bored. So all of these entertainment factors become super important when the present moment itself is wildly entertaining. It's just a matter of attention. So does that make sense, Mike? Now, does it make sense where I'm going with this? Maybe not. So,
I was on mute there. I'll answer.
oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I do hear what you're saying, and not just that it's a matter of practicing it, but I guess the one that you love to say, a leaf at the mercy of the wind. I think the other side, the flip side of that is like you are the wind, like you carry the wind, and
that's called flow. There'll be no words necessary when that's occurring. When you are the wind, no words are necessary. You don't need words to pep talk yourself. You don't need words to convince other people. You don't need words to communicate to your own cognition. You just do. And people like that. You've been like that probably in areas of your life. Maybe not. I've been like that in areas of my life. And it's called flow. It's called there's no interruption between action and the present moment. You are in complete synchronization with the moment as it's moving. However, the moment we start to compare, contrast, think, try to figure it out, those are all thoughts, but then we start to interrupt that flow.
right.
And that's the condition that most of us are in most of the time, is interrupted flow of energy, of life force, of chi, of attention. And so the point with that was, Mike, there's really two things that can occur. And in the beginning, typically the first thing that's going to be the most prominent is forgetting. And that's understandable. We're going to forget the practice and then we're going to remember it. And that's why we call that counterbalancing. And that's okay. I mean, it is what it is until it isn't what it is. So we forget and then we feed the four destroyers. We feed the atrophy of attention. That's one thing that can happen. The other thing that can happen is that you're aware of your mind, you're aware of your actions, and you still choose a dysfunctional route. That's called cherry picking. We're not ready for the cherry picking class, but I did some cherry picking at the dispensary. I did some cherry picking when I was teaching. I did some cherry picking when I was at the restaurant. I did a wild amount of cherry picking at the movie theater. And then it wasn't cherry picking before that though. It was just straight up unconsciousness before that. But we will have eventually someday a class on redirecting the cherry picking mind. That's a rule of three moment. When you feel yourself starting to cherry pick, the only solution that I can come up with is to do my practice because it works when I do it. Does that make sense, Mike? That's kind of what I was alluding to, is there's almost two different ways that we can get in our own way. One is just straight up forgetting and unconsciousness, and that feeds the atrophy of awareness and it feeds the four destroyers. But let's say you are aware of your mind, you are aware of your output because you're practicing, and you still choose to do something that is dysfunctional because it's a habit, like eat that third or fourth piece of cake. You know that that's not balanced for yourself. You feel it. Nobody can tell you. You already know because you're paying attention, but then you still choose to do it. That is a type of dysfunction that I call cherry picking. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, I love the cherry pick.
Yeah. We could start a club. And it is what it is until it isn't, So I'm not judging you, and I would appreciate, well, actually, I don't care. You can think thought streams about me, that doesn't matter, but.
This is a club, Ernest.
Almost. All right, so that's kind of where I was going today. I really wanted to focus on the three words that we would use to describe tea. Tea is a daily embodiment practice. I do it all day, every day, And what do you know? It made my meditation desirable and easy. It made my Tai Chi practice desirable and easy. It made sitting on a log with a quiet mind for an hour the easiest fucking thing in the world. But it took a lot of practice. It took a dedication to where is my mind and did I put it there? And that's it. Did I put my mind there? The answer is yes or no. Doesn't really matter where I put it as long as that's not a habit. And it doesn't have to be doing anything for me necessarily in the moment. I just have to be doing it, and I'm going towards peace. If I'm going towards peace, then I'm that's all I need, because peace is the precursor to connection, and connection is the feeling of love, joy, vibrancy. So as long as I'm going towards peace, I'm all good. I can use binary. I don't need an emotional scale personally. Although if emotional scales work for you, then by all means. I mean, I would recommend being present and mindful and choosing your attention while collaborating with your emotional scale, which is an Abraham Hicks thing, and I don't have a thought about it. It's not something that I would prefer. I have preferences. The emotional scale is too much to remember for me. I'm not that smart, so I got to narrow things down to 2 or 3. So I can't remember 14 or 15 or 120 different potential emotions. And wait, what's the 13th emotion? And then I got to go to the 14th emotion. And where is my mind and did I put it there? If I put it there, I'm going towards peace. Done. That's all I need to remember. I can do that. I can remember that at least. Simplicity was because I can be very stupid sometimes. And that's not leaking power. That's an observation. I'm just describing my mind at times. It could be very stupid. And that's okay. Every day, less and less, is it acting that way. So the practice is working when I do it. And when I do it, it works. So the moment that I wake up, I begin my practice. I personally go into longest vision, highest reach, and my deepest love. So my deepest love is this opportunity to live. And that's kind of the same, Lauren, right? I go into appreciation thoughts about what I'm grateful for. And the thing that I'm most grateful for is this opportunity to breathe and be alive. I'm creating a strong minimum so that when things aren't going my way, I can tell myself, I'm alive. That's good enough. You know, maybe I'm not on that just won the lottery type of vibe. That's okay. I'm alive. I get to experience. So eventually this line is going to be so full of stuff, you know, that you're going to have so many things that you can choose to do with your practice. And if I start to get to hydrostasy, I'm going to add a lot of personal details. But this is kind of what it's going to look like. So every Monday I'll make the space available. And when you come here on Monday, we'll talk more about building this from the time we wake up, and then I got it over here, to the time we go to bed, and that's nighttime and sleeping. Maybe someday I'll talk about dream walking and we can talk about deliberate attention in your dreams. For now, I have no reason to believe that that is something I can share with another person. Okay. I mean, as a teaching, of course I can still share. The next 2 books after the Voice of Power are Visions of Power, and then I'm either going to call it Dreams of Power or The Dreamscape. I haven't decided yet, but that gets a little woo-woo, folks. But the reason I don't focus on that and I don't begin with that is because it could take attention away from where is your mind and did you put it there. And as far as I'm concerned, no woo-woo for me is possible or even desirable without peace. I don't want to be able to levitate without peace. I don't want to be able to shoot laser beams out of my eyeballs without peace, because then what am I going to do with that? I imagined myself, I could see myself. This is a vision. I envisioned myself astrally traveling. As far as I'm concerned, I did. And when I got there, I didn't have anything to offer. I was a hot mess. And I'm like, I don't want to offer these beings my my monkey mind. I want to be at peace. I want to hear what they have to say. I don't want to get into fighting with them, because that's what I do with everything. So it just made sense to me to always find peace first, and that's my preference. So that is a reflection in the way that I teach, but it doesn't at any moment ever declare war on any belief system or anything like that. Now, the only thing that is not going to be mixable or it can't collaborate with T is predetermination. Not only is that not a preference to me, I don't see it. I see no principle for predetermination whatsoever. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Even the electron that has the random probability of being around its nucleus is for me, that's clear evidence that that's not predetermination. So predetermination meaning that a deity has or some force has already determined every thought you think, every action you do, and we're all just playing it out. Sorry, that's not T. If that's what you believe, that's great, and I wish you all the best. But there's no way that that belief can also collaborate with where is my mind and did I put it there? Because then that was already determined by the deity. Do you see what I mean? So that became my mantra, Jenny, when I was doing Tai Chi, because I kept wanting to be a Tai Chi master. I kept wanting to move my Chi. I kept wanting to heal my liver and my kidney with my mind. I wanted to do these things. I kept wanting to, ascend and have conversations with the masters of Tai Chi. I was attempting to do these things. And then I had a vision of, well, what happens when I do it? I'm just giving that as an example. This was a vision that I had. I saw myself doing this, but with no peace. So I was still just a leaf. I was still just a madman. Only I could levitate now, and I could do these things now. Do you notice how in superhero movies everybody is still fighting? Everybody is still trying to kill each other in superhero movies, but they have the powers that we're all, looking at like, oh gosh, I wish I had. I wish I could fly. I wish I could be invisible. I wish I could walk through things. I wish I could, levitate and time travel and astral travel. And I think all of those things are possible. If we have imagined it, this is my final stance on it. If you can imagine it, it is possible. But I recommend imagining it as a peaceful entity first. But we have to be that peaceful entity. And I do have a feeling that once we're more peaceful, and actually this isn't a feeling, but I don't talk about this very often, is that you see what you are. And I mean that vibrationally, energetically. A lot of the reason that it's difficult for people to see non-biological entities perhaps is because we're not vibrating at that frequency. We can't see beings of peace when we're at war with our own mind and our own experience and our own present moment. When we're resisting the present moment, when we're fighting all that is, we can't see these beings of peace if they exist. So I am going to do a podcast where I talk more about these kind of things, but yeah, the mind space is a little more practical in terms of where is my mind and did I put it there? That's how we get to peace first. So my recommendation, and then I'll take any final questions, comments, or concerns for today's Mindspace Academy is, and then so at the top, this is what we're doing all day when necessary, or it's just kind of what we're doing all day in addition. So I'm always checking in. If necessary, I will rule of three. I'll do it right now. The moment I start to compare myself to Ida's practice, nah, rule of three. That cognition does not serve me. It's repetitive, it's habitual, and it doesn't make me feel good. Holding attention. This is maintaining a trick of attention. Not something that's going to be accessible in the beginning, very likely. I don't want to put any human being in a box. Maybe somebody on day 2 of this practice can start to hold their attention all day long. I don't know. I just don't see that very often. But it does become a critical component of the T practice, is to maintain a background of deliberate attention while you do everything else. That's called embodiment. We learn to embody, we practice embodiment, and then we embody. It's kind of the way it rolls. All right, so begin our day. The first thing we do when we wake up, peace first. I am awake, I am alive, peace. And peace is a mind that is not fighting itself. And by that, I mean a mind that is not fighting the present moment. And when we're lost in thought, we're fighting the present moment. We just don't know that we're in a fight. No, Ida, I even do this before peeing in the morning. I don't know. I don't have to go pee as soon as I wake up. It's weird. I'm just one of those people. I just don't. I don't know why. The moment I see the dispensary, I have to go to the bathroom. But it's a psychological thing. It's not an age thing, Ida. And a little biological as well. But I cannot drink all morning, and the moment I see that dispensary, I have to pee. That has to be biological or psychological. It has to be psychological, Mike. I've tested this. I've literally woken up and drank no liquids except for coffee. And then the moment I see that dispensary, literally the moment it comes into my vision, I have to pee.
Oh, Ernest, you drove an hour to get there. You have to pee. It's all right.
It doesn't make sense, though. I can go other hours without peeing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Why that hour versus
Why
other
that
hour?
hour? Also, if I don't drink anything before it, like why all of a sudden why didn't the sensation begin 5 minutes before I get there? Why is it always the moment I visually see it, the feeling of having to go pee occurs? I don't know. That's one of the great mysteries, Mike.
This could be a whole nother class on this, but we would be lost in cognition, I think.
Well, if it was a class, I would have to teach how this is one of the things that I don't know. This isn't my lane, but I would continue to be observational. I would continue to listen to the sounds and the affirmations from the world around me. And someday, the reason that I pee or have to go pee the moment I see the building will be delivered to me. It'll come to me. So rather than trying to figure it out, rather than trying to control, rather than taking a Facebook poll, I can just wait for the information to come to me, the knowledge to come to me. Class dismissed. All right, any questions, comments, or concerns about anything we talked about today, anything in general about the tea practice, about your practice, any questions about my practice, any questions at all before we head out of here? So if you want to sign up for one-on-ones, you can do that. You can click mentoring on ekrolik.com, or you can go to the Mindspace, it's just www.mindspacementor.com. And that's my mentoring website. That's the website that I will keep, hopefully, even when I'm 110 if they have the internet. But once I have my degrees and I'm teaching formal or, professionally, well, no, not professionally, I guess academically, I'm still going to maintain the free spaces. I'm still going to maintain everything I'm doing now, if that makes sense. So a little bit different of an approach than what I've tried in the past. A little bit. Okay, any questions? Anything you guys want to chat about? Otherwise, we do have another 7 a.m. tomorrow. I think tomorrow was supposed to be the group study where we just talk about stuff. Is it? 7 a.m. is, oh wait, yeah, so today is creating a daily practice, and then tomorrow I think is group study. Yeah, that makes sense.
And is the movement class that you did last week on a Wednesday? I haven't seen that on YouTube yet.
Oh yeah, okay, I'll look for it. But the movement that I did, I just started to talk about breath. So
Okay.
and if I'm doing movement in the Mindspace Academy, it's going to be super duper basic.
So it's not a must see then, is what you're saying? Although I'd like to see it.
I still want to say yes, it's a must see, but I
Yeah.
do know what you're talking about for
Yeah.
you, and no, it's very likely not absolutely necessary. If you're looking to learn the Tai Chi form, or if you're looking to learn some of the more accumulated concepts of movement, then a one-on-one would be perfect for that. And then I could start to show some of the more detailed aspects of how hydrostasy overlaps my movement practice. When I'm doing Tai Chi, I'm doing my hydrostasy points of attention. I'm imagining the energy. I see it as I'm moving, feeling it paying attention to the movement of the energy. My breath is smooth. I'm not trying to control. I have my golden line active, so I'm paying attention to that. I'm not comparing and contrasting. The moment I start to think words, it's not appropriate. Rule of 3, just peace or something like that. So I mirror hydrostasy with my movement, and you get the elegant crane movement. What we would be more doing is park style Tai Chi, where it's just super basic movements. We probably will never string that into a form. But hydrostasy, I could string it into a complete 82 movement form if you wanted. But yes, it still must see Ida. It's probably still good. Good reminder.
Good for deliberate dialogue, substitute dialogue.
Substitute dialogue. Yeah.
I come watch it while I'm.
And later it could be just a good follow along, because you'll already know how to do syncing the chi. You already know how to do the 18 gates. You already know how to do what I call concentric circles. So the bottom line is that eventually you can just watch those videos and just follow along for fun. And that could be a formal practice if you
I
want
do
it.
those every morning.
Me too. All right. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Any final questions? Carly, Lauren, Shayna, Ida, Karen, Mike, anything else you guys would like to know before we head out? So I hope you have engaged your practice at least now. So if you didn't this morning, I think now's the time probably to start.
Just before you go, could you tell me why we're all here? Just joking.
No, the only no, I played that game. I gave it a little space, and then I let something come to my mind. And the answer is that we're stronger together. You know, ultimately, the reason that we're all here is because that's the way I have observed. This would be a principle of human nature, is that we're social creatures, that we do work well together, and that if communication is unobstructed, we can get a whole lot done. Like, we're marvelous creators, like absolutely marvelous, when we're not trying to kick each other and kick ourselves in the face. So I would say the real reason that we come together is because we're stronger together. The reason I teach is because I feel like it is my responsibility to the species to share the path to inner peace and inner peace in the evolution of consciousness. And I don't know if I'm going to do it forever. I don't really know. I just know that it is a human principle to create, to want to be creative, and all of this is that. So I think if all of this was just teaching somebody else's philosophies and stuff, I don't know. I'd probably just go do my practice and live my life as a hermit. I don't know, or a mogul. Who knows, right? But I probably wouldn't be a teacher, is what I'm saying. I have chosen teaching. Actually, I don't know. It's like Shayna said, ever since she's known me, I've talked about wanting to be a teacher. Two things that I've always talked about wanting to be since I was 2 years old: a writer and a teacher. So I don't know if you call this conscious creation, but I'm actually right now doing both. So it is what it is. What do you think, Mike?
Meant in the universe, Ernest.
Oh. You're unmuted, Mike. I didn't know if you had a comment.
I liked what you said about we're here together. I mean, why? It seems like some type of advancement, but I would say that I like that. I did the sweat lodge yesterday for the first time, and it was the wigwam experience really showed me like what we're going for, even right here, which is that togetherness, that it's like we are stronger together, and then we can advance.
Yeah, and
we
the
can always
principle.
do it as a straight shot individually, but it's really when we come together that it's collective. And the collective has all of it in there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And the sweat lodge interrupts the stream of habitual self-talk, and then all kinds of things can be filled in that mind space, such as the ideas you just had.
Yeah. It's amazing
That's
how long I needed that. I came out of there like baptized.
well, see, now that's the thing, Mike. That's where I would call a timeout. Because if you're doing the T practice, you're doing the sweat lodge all the time. Because all the sweat lodge did, I could have dropped you out of an airplane and it would have interrupted the repetitive habitual cognition. I could have taken you to a Kundalini meditation retreat where women and men were doing their Kundalini yoga butt naked. That would be so different for your everyday cognition that it would interrupt the repetitive habitual stream of cognition that does not make you feel well. So the quality of what you experienced wasn't intrinsic necessarily to the sweat lodge itself, although there's qualities of the sweat lodge itself that can't necessarily be replicated in Wim Hof swimming, for example. So, each methodology, each thing that you do, not methodology, each individual practice or approach can have a different flavor, but it's not as if that flavor itself is what we're looking for. Ultimately, what I'm looking for is peace, and that is a derivative that is directly proportional. It is the byproduct of interrupting what would otherwise be habitual repetitive streams of thought that remove me from my connection to the present moment, the seat of experience, the point of infinity, the action point of all existence and experience. The multi-dimensional space exists right now. So the way that I would look at anything, whether it's a video game, a sweat lodge, a yoga class, a Tai Chi class, a T the complete practice class, or where is your mind and did I put it there with the trick of attention? It is interrupting what would otherwise be unconscious, repetitive, habitual streams of cognition, thinking, and trying to control. And that sweat lodge did it for you. When Ida goes swimming, it does it for her. When we do our individual things, it does it for us. Fox walking does it for me, so that's why I fox walk. Do you get the principle behind that though, Mike?
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's proportionate to how fast, for me, with my analogy, how fast the train was actually running. I was able to see that when I came out of there, and even in there, I wasn't necessarily all peaceful. I mean, you go through like I was sitting though pretty calmly, just kind of dealing within, and I don't know. I came out of there noticing how much my mind was moving, even in different places where I thought I had slowed it down. I hadn't, and I wasn't in my yoga practice. I wasn't in a balancing practice. I was more in a counterbalancing and trying to save the world with the stuff that I talk about. So it's like I thought I wasn't wrapped into it, but then the minute someone sort of does something or says something that's not in how it was in how I had it, how I had it in my bubble of perception, I was like prone to being offended or prone to reaction to that. And then I had some outsourcing going on, a couple different things, and it just got to be too much. Like it needed to be very centered and very much what's happening next in my environment, so that I could be more balanced. So yeah, that's what came up for me. And when I came out of there, I was just like totally washed from the dross that I had turned into a lot of different situations into. Even while saying like I've slowed it down and I've taken some time to talk to really slow it down. I noticed that there was a huge level of difference from before and after. In my own presence, I would say, or my own feeling. And I was smiling more, I was like really a little bit of retreat effect, but I definitely had like a levity.
Yeah, it interrupted the habitual repetitive streams of thought and all kinds of stuff. I mean, who knows what's going to come in from that at that point, but yeah. Awesome. It is definitely a little bit of retreat effect. It is a little bit of sensationalizing. It is a little bit of going from one type of thinking to another with, moments of interrupting the thinking through, maybe there was some substitute dialogue because you were listening to somebody else chant, or there were techniques, there were ways that your cognition was being interrupted. The sweat lodge itself, the sweat, how do you know that you're sweating? Because you can perceive the heat. So they're using the perception of heat to interrupt the repetitive habitual stream of cognition. It's all the same.
Right.
That's the reason that the ancients
I
would
would start building wigwams and stuff, and all of a sudden, then I could go into like a different repetitive thought there,
you totally
right?
could. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Or
then
if I take that and then try to go do, all of a sudden, then I could go right outside of it. So it's a
well,
matter of balance. Yeah.
and then also what and maybe they did, but it's like what techniques can I take out of the sweat lodge, because I can't sit in a sweat lodge all fucking day. I mean, maybe you could, Mike. Maybe that's what you want to do. You just want to upend your whole life and quit your job and tell your kids good luck on their own, and you're going to go live in a sweat lodge for the rest of your days. Hey, man, I don't want to tell you what to do if that's your interest, but I would certainly say that that's not, in air quotes, absolutely necessary. So the key for me would be, if I went to that sweat lodge, first of all, I wouldn't feel the need to judge it. I don't know how I would have gotten there, because I'm not interested in the reason I'm not as interested is because I'm already doing it. Like, it's like, but yeah. So let's say I go to the sweat lodge, I create a little space. The things that I would want is what is going to come from this sweat lodge that I can take with me into every moment for the rest of my life. Do you see the difference? You see what I mean, Mike? Like, I wouldn't expect them to give that to me. I would try to find that myself, because they're probably not going to give it to me, because they probably don't do it themselves.
Yeah.
That's why they can't give it to me.
Ernest. Yeah, no, Ernest. It's what you see. It's your own piece. I mean, it's your vision quest. It's part of your vision quest is what you see with your eyes open in the dark.
Yep, that all makes sense to me. But yeah, I can't imagine agreeing to go to a sweat lodge, but I don't declare war on them.
All good.
I'm sure they serve a purpose, especially for the monkey mind. But I think that it would be even better to embody tea and then see what the sweat lodge can bring out.
Yeah.
And then if that becomes a thing that you enjoy, then now you're just doing something because you enjoy it, not because you think that it's going to have this. Then you just end up doing sweat lodges because you feel like it.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference, and I can talk about this later, but there's a big difference between the evolution through some sort of catalyst, meaning that you have to, and evolution because you can.
Yeah.
The evolution because you can is the evolution of consciousness. The evolution because we have to is the evolution of our physical species. So if all of a sudden water became more scarce, we're going to have to learn to intake less water, or we're not going to survive physically. So maybe we do, maybe we don't. But consciousness evolves because it can, because we're at the top of the food chain. We're not physically under threat. So the mind now has the space to evolve. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah.
And evolution is directly proportional to adaptation to change. If I rely on sweat lodges for my peace, I'm not saying this is you at all. I'm just,
Yeah, no, I'm following you.
Yeah.
Any modality can be
Any modality can be attractive.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Now imagine what Ida is saying, that you had peace first before the sweat lodge or before anything else. Whatever you're doing will have a different quality. It will have the quality of infinity. And then maybe you meet an ethereal being, and you do that because you can. Now, if you start telling me I have to, Mike, I'm going to start calling bullshit. I'm going to say, no, that's your ethereal being. That's your boat. Go float it. That's your creation, the sweat lodge experience. Mine isn't. But if you're doing something just because you can and it's in balance, what do I have to say about that? My opinion isn't, unless you ask me, and I don't even have one, but if you did, I would offer one, I guess. Do you see the what I'm talking about though, Mike, the principle in this?
Yes.
All right, so with that in mind, we will not be scheduling or be organizing a sweat lodge anytime soon. We may do a retreat or something like that, like a get together. I probably won't call it a retreat because of the retreat effect, but yeah.
Maybe by then I'll know how to build them, Ernest, and we can
Build
all
what?
do it. build the little hut to do with the
Oh, that'd be
sweat lodge.
dope. Hell yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what
And,
happens. Who
now,
knows? Infinite possibilities, you know, for our group cuddling, but we'll get there.
if you build it, I will come to the sweat lodge.
Awesome.
But I'm not coming to a sweat lodge to achieve anything.
I hear you, man.
Yeah.
This talk this morning was helpful, though. I'm hearing what
Cool.
you're laying down. So thank you for the talk.
Yep, for sure. All right. I will see you guys again tomorrow at 7 a.m. if you can make it. We're going to do an open group study. I'll have some things to talk about just in case you don't, so that the conversation goes somewhere. But otherwise, I will see you guys again tomorrow. I'll upload this to YouTube. I got lots of stuff going on. If you think that a one-on-one would be beneficial towards the evolution of consciousness, both individually and collectively, just let me know. It's an affordable price. All right. I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you. Bye, everyone.